안녕나의 친구들. Hey guys, so a lot of you seem to really enjoy the first episode of Squid Game and my reaction to it. So as promised, here is episode 2 and I'll continue editing all of my other reactions as well. This was a really heavy, emotional episode to watch. And the first thing that I'll comment on is that it's something that I really noticed during the editing process was actually that how much Netflix sanitized the language, the Korean language, in terms of all the swear words. I know that there are other points of differences in terms of nuance, but really just the sort of flavor of Korean swear words was really toned down a bit in the Netflix translation, which I found interesting. And I think the way that it was actually portrayed throughout the series is a pretty important part because obviously the series follows the lives of quite poor, desperate individuals, and a way to sort of show that is through the language that they use. And in general, I would actually say that the Korean language is very colorful. And by that, I do mean by the profanity. Even in just everyday situations, a lot of people use cuss words very, very, very liberally. And even in family situations, even my dad, for example, calls me a lot of names that, if you translate it here, would be like, why it might sound really aggressive, but he doesn't necessarily mean it in that way. But I think that also reflects the very hard life that a lot of Koreans anyways, especially those who are poorer, had to deal with. It makes them tougher, harder people, and also comes out in the language that they use. And on that note, that's why I also love the second episode, because obviously we were watching these lives of these people and, sort of the situations that they're in for them to actually have to participate in the game. And there are two things that I really wanted to focus on. And the first one being of the girl, the one from North Korea. So this is something that I'm not too sure how many of you guys will be familiar with. By this point, I'm pretty sure most of you will know that there is a North and South Korea. And the history of how Korea came to this is just so tragic. And this episode really showed the difficulties of people actually trying to move away from North Korea to South Korea, because obviously they're having to do it illegally. There's no actual legal way to migrate to South Korea from North Korea. That would be counted as treason. You'd be, taken to a concentration camp. You might be killed. So that's just not a possibility. But also finding alternative ways to come to South Korea is also super difficult. But whilst I was watching this, what I really thought of was really the history of how Korea came to this point, which is something that I don't think many people know about, but it came about as a result of World War II, and really Koreans actually didn't have much of a say in it. So from the very early 1900s until the Allies won during World War II, Korea had been colonized by Japan, and then as World War II ended and the global powers actually sort of entered the Cold War, that's when Korea sort of got caught in the crossfire between the powers of America and Soviet Russia. And Korea as a nation, as a country, didn't really actually get much of a say in it. And it was just a very arbitrary line that was drawn, that was just cut up towards the middle without sort of care about, the fact that this was actually once a unified country, and then suddenly they were plummeted into their own civil war. And the really tragic thing is that they really were just one country. So for example, my grandfather on my mum's side, so my mum's dad, is actually from North Korea before it was North Korea. As in, he grew up there, he was born and grew up in the northern part of Korea, and then once World War II started, he went down south to participate, to join in the war, to fight during the war, and then once the war stopped, that line was drawn and he never got to see his family again. And from this, there are some heartwarming stories, like for example, in the 80s, they ran a program where they actually tried to reunite some families between the North and South, which is, a very sweet story. But obviously that didn't happen for the majority of people, and also, North Korea is the way that it is. So it's just a really super sad story that I was reflecting on as I was watching this episode. And another part is actually also the series' treatment of migrants in South Korea. And I don't think this is just unique to Korea. I think this is actually a common case that happens globally. I know, for example, that it happens in Australia as well. But migrant workers are often very vulnerable workers who don't get a lot of rights, who are working in really extremely poor conditions, and because of the fact that they're not familiar with the country's laws, with its systems, maybe even with its language, they are often very severely abused. And that was something that, that was brought up in this episode as well. And I appreciated that the show was actually tackling these real tough issues, but also in just a very organic way. But like I said, this episode was so heavy to watch, but also so necessary, and I really enjoyed it. But without further ado, let's get into the reaction. Hey guys, reacting to episode 2 of Squid Game. it's so weird that they're going to burn them anyways, and yet they go to the effort of wrapping it up, you know, having a big, pretty pink bow on it. I guess it really just highlights the sick, perverse nature of the games. Oh, that's very nice. Wow, more than half of them. Oh my goodness. Okay, that's surprising because I didn't know that that's still a thing. But I know that my dad's legal birthday is actually a year later than his actual birth date because his mum couldn't afford to pay for him to be registered. So he actually was, for almost a year of his life, he wasn't actually legally registered as a human, and so I didn't know that that was still a thing that existed, so that's interesting. So what that means though in our family's case is that on top of the lunar calendar birthdays that I was talking about in episode 1, my dad has 3 birthdays because he's got his actual birth date, his lunar birthday, and then his legal birthday. That's actually a common expression in Korean, 가난한 게 죄야, or you know, 가난한 게 죄냐. So both as a question and sort of as like a sad fact that means being poor is a sin. You know, to be poor is a fault. It's a crime to be poor. And obviously you can also have the reverse, like in this case, that, you know, it's not a crime, it's not a sin to be poor. Not one deserving of death anyways. Actually, yeah, how do they just get away with kidnapping and killing hundreds of people? See, this is why he went to SNU. Oh, that's cruel. They're not going to want to leave now, are they? Wow. Lots of cash. So going back to that very rough exchange rate, 100 million won is about the rough equivalent of 100,000 Australian dollars, which is a lot of money, but the fact that it has been tied to each individual player just really means that this is how much they're worth. In the eyes of, you know, the game runners, their lives have been placed not just a number in terms of their tracksuit and on their uniform, but they have literally placed a monetary value on their lives. And $100,000 just, I don't know, that doesn't seem like a lot. It's so harsh. And no way that it's not confidential. No way that it's not private. So everyone knows what you chose as well. Imagine the judgment that comes with this. You must be really confident in your game playing abilities. Ooh, SNU guy wants to win. Who wants the money? Netflix has really sanitized all the profanity in this. Oh, it's gonna be the old man. I mean, he's got nothing to live for. I mean, he has nothing to lose, right? Nothing to lose. Nothing to live for really either, because he doesn't have much of a life left, but he's got nothing to lose. He's feeling confident after how well he did during 무궁화꽃이 피었습니다. She doesn't want to see her baby. Must have not done a great job if you can just untie it that quickly, easily by mouth. Why would he do that? Why wouldn't you wait until... Why wouldn't you You know, her question was right. Are you naive or are you stupid? You know, untie your legs first. Yeah. This girl speaks truth. And you swore on your mother as well. You know, his poor mother. So it makes sense that he would recognize that they're in Yeouido because Yeouido is sort of the capital of like finance and banking in Korea. And I think that's what he was in, right? I think he was in investments. See, 2,000원. Imagine that being so cheap. $2. The equivalent of $2. Coffee, close to 10. Yeah, so in Korea that's very popular. You can buy 컵라면, that's how we say 컵라면, and then they'll give you the hot water so you can eat there as well. There's a lot of I'll probably mention this every time food comes up. You can buy kimbap at these convenience stores as well. So many different types. I'm sure, as you guys know, so many different types of instant noodles in Korea. Ansan is very far from ramyeon. I mean, Ansan is very far from Yeouido. He can't walk. Oh, he's very nice though. Gave him ramyeon, now he's giving him bus money. So he's giving him the equivalent of around $10. 사장님 is like boss as well. Oh no, what's wrong with his mom? Oh no, what's wrong with his mom? There's a lot of these as well. Vending machines where you could just get really cheap coffee. It's like maybe like 50 cents. You see it everywhere. You see it at almost every train station. He's using sort of like lingo, but the direct translation is 선물 is like a gift. And so the main character, Song Gi-hoon doesn't realize what he's talking about because he's not in that world. So he's literally asking a gift, a present. How could you spend that much money on a present? They're all scum. They're all scum. These poor mothers. Oh, and she's leaving the hospital too. Okay, I am not ready to deal with the emotional pain of something happening to his mum. I can't watch it. Oh no, she's walking on it too. Look at her limping. Oh. This makes me so sad. Stop letting her walk. So Koshiwon is like it's like cheap dormitories. Kyuni didn't get that. He got just like a simple, name tag. Just the flimsy old name tag. Where was his little present box? So it becomes really apparent when she's talking to her brother. Remember in the first episode, that guy, the thug, the gangster, asked her, made a comment that she's from North Korea. And I don't know if you guys can tell, but you can actually tell that she's speaking in sort of a different dialect. So South Koreans, North Koreans, we speak the same language, but North Koreans have a bit of a different dialect to us. So you can tell that it wasn't as apparent when she was talking to the other players earlier, but now that she's, talking to her family, and I guess maybe she's trying to comfort him, you can tell that she's reverting back to that. I can't with this episode. They all speak such good Korean. The game he's playing is called Hwatu, which I don't actually know how to play, but they're played with like very small cards. It's sort of like you have to find pairs or like quadruplets or something. Like I said, I'm not too sure how to play, but it's a popular game in Korea. I know my parents know how to play. I should actually ask them to teach me. That was a dumb move on his part. Why would you look at the money? He probably wouldn't have even noticed. Run, 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 run! Oh! Wow. On the way, she took his money as well. That's sick. What a badass. Why would he answer the door? I mean, isn't he running away? Isn't he in hiding? No way. The grandpa's showing up here. I don't know, sus. Inyeon's sort of like fate. We're destined. I don't know, was it destiny though? Oh, they're gonna crush up. They're gonna crush up that ramyeon. Have you guys tried that before? Just eating it as chips? We even actually have like a kiddies version where it's not actually just instant ramyeon, and they actually have it as a snack. It was called busho busho. Busho busho is like smash smash or like crush crush. We have a similar thing in Australia as well. It was called, I think, mummy noodles? Mammy noodles. It's got like a little blue, it's got a blue monster at the front. Hierarchies and respect for those who are considered either your elders or someone in a better position, in a high position, is really, it's a strict sort of social code in Korea. So in here, in English, it doesn't matter how old you are, we'll call each other by name, right? Most of the time anyways. But in Korea, you would never do that. To just call someone by their name and just say Toksu, which is his name, it seems like, it's almost like an insult. People would actually take that as an insult unless they sort of gave you the A-OK. So that is a huge affront at the moment. Apart from just not using names, we actually use honorifics at the end of sentences. It's always like your. It's an honorific added to shows the status and the relative position between the two parties. So here he went from using that honorific to dropping it completely, calling him by name, and then just talking to him almost as if he's someone beneath him now. So and swearing at him too. Man, his pride. Do it for your mum. No. Oh, this sucks. You should make a deal with him. Please, give me $2,000. I'll help you. I'll give you as much information as you need. Missed opportunity. Hey, smart girl. I really like this second episode as well. The fact that they were actually all allowed to go back home and then they all came in to this. They all returned to the game. It's just a crazy dynamic, really. And I guess in the eyes of the game runners, they can really just go till the end and say, you made this choice. This was your choice to come back in. But it's just so cruel, playing with these people for money. If they have the money, just help them out. But yeah. And look, I'm just going to say this now. I'm not ready to see something happen to his mum. So please, I don't care what happens by the end of the series, please let his mum be okay. I can't handle it. Okay, alright. I'll see you guys again soon.